Hello again and welcome back to another session of Commerce class with me, Suman Rathore. Students, finance is the lifeblood of a business organization. And no business can run successfully and smoothly without the availability of adequate finance at the right time. Finance refers to the management of cash and credit not only to meet the day-to-day requirements but also to facilitate the diversification, expansion and growth activities. It includes all kinds of capital and funds used in the business, and the amount of finance required differs from organization to organization depending upon the nature and the size of operations. And a business has to evaluate all the sources of finance available in the market before making financing decision. Actually, the sources of finance are classified into three broad categories. First, on the basis of duration. Second, on the basis of ownership. And third, on the basis of source of generation. So now, let's understand these one by one. Now, on the basis of duration, finance can be classified into long-term finance, medium-term finance and short-term finance. Whereas on the basis of ownership, it can be classified into owner's fund and borrowed funds. And on the basis of source of generation, it can be internal sources of finance or external sources of finance. Now, let's understand these. Now, long-term finance refers to the funds raised for a long period of time, generally for more than 5 years. And this kind of finance is used for investment in fixed assets, like for purchasing land and building or for purchasing plant and machinery, etc. Now, this can be raised by issuing shares or debentures or loan from financial institutions or even by using the retained earning of the business. And this type of finance cannot be taken out of the business without closing down the firm or reducing the business operations. The amount of long-term funds required depends upon the nature and size of business. For example, a factory requires more long-term funds as compared to a shop. Next is medium-term finance. Now, when finance is raised for more than 1 year but less than 5 years, it is called medium-term source of finance. It can be raised through public deposits or loan from banks and financial institutions or lease financing, etc. The funds from medium-term sources of finance are utilized for meeting medium-term financial requirements of the enterprise, like for modernization or for expansion, etc. Next is short-term finance. Now, this type of finance is raised for a short period, say for up to 1 year. It is used for meeting the short-term needs of the business, like for meeting the day-to-day needs of the business. It can be raised through public deposits or through commercial banks or overdraft, etc. Short-term funds can be used over and over again from year to year. Then on the basis of ownership, first is owner's fund. Now, as the name suggests, it is invested in the business by the owners of the business. It includes preference shares, equity shares, and retained earnings of previous years. It is invested in the business for a longer period of time and is mainly used for acquiring fixed assets of the business. Then next is borrowed funds. Now, borrowed funds represents that part of capital which is borrowed from outsiders. Debentures, secured and unsecured loans from financial institutions, public deposits, lease financing, commercial papers are the various sources through which funds can be borrowed. In some cases, companies have to keep their assets mortgaged for raising funds from these sources, and it can be used for different purposes depending upon the time period for which it is borrowed. And then, on the basis of source of generation, internal source of finance is the finance or capital which is generated internally by the business itself in its normal course of operation. It basically includes selling of assets, retained earnings, etc. This type of finance makes the firm financially independent but can fulfill only the limited needs of the business. And second is external source of finance. Now this is the finance which is arranged from outside the business. It is normally costlier than internal source of finance. It includes issue of debentures, public deposits, loans from financial institutions, etc. It is considered as a convenient way of generating huge amount of funds for the business. So now we can say that financial needs of a business can be met through a number of sources. But a businessman has to analyze the various sources of finance available in the market before deciding on a particular source to meet the requirements of the business. That's all for today. Thanks for staying in tune and don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. Thank you and goodbye for now.